We're
We're going to call to order this meeting of the Plain Township Board of Trustees. If everybody will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome this evening. It is Tuesday, June 23rd, just for the meeting minutes. We have our agenda before us. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections by fellow board members or department heads?
I would like to add something for, it's a communications for the fire department, Brookhaven Avenue.
Hey Joe, I'm going to add 2 on the road, just the yard waste site work, and then quick touch, point 3, Market 43, Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
And then under concerns of trustees, I'm going to add a second one, USGS. Are there any other changes? The agenda will stand as amended. Brings us, we don't have anything directly under the sheriff's report. Do we have anybody in the audience that has anything for the sheriff? We actually have Sheriff George Meyer with us tonight, and Chief John Oliver. Of course, Sergeant Koenig as always. Does anybody have anything for the sheriff? Okay. Nothing on our unfinished business. First item's new business. I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. Item number 1 is a resolution to authorize payment to Otarma in the amount not to exceed $2,820.88 from Fund 01A 10A.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And that's the end of new business.
Thank you. It's going to take us to the fiscal officer's report. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Fiscal Officer number 1 is a request for resolution to authorize payment of pending warrants in the amount of $366,833.59.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 2 is a request for resolution to authorize payment for regular payroll in an amount not to exceed $250,000.
I'll move on fiscal officer number 2.
Second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 3 is a request for resolution to authorize payment for the following medical claims.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 4 is the investment report for May.
Anybody's got questions, feel free to see Tom afterwards.
Fiscal Officer number 5 is a request for resolution to authorize the following transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 6 is the bank reconciliation for May.
Okay.
And Fiscal Officer number 7 is a request for resolution to authorize a refund as follows for overpayment for EMS as requested by Ohio Billing.
I'll move on fiscal officer number 7.
I'll second it.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
That concludes Fiscal Officer report.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. It's going to take us to Administrator, Ms. Campbell.
Thanks. Item number 1 is a resolution determining to proceed with the submission of the question as a replacement in excess of 10 mil limitation for the purpose of payment of the costs incurred by the Plain Township Police District as a result of contracts made with other political subdivisions in order to obtain police protection for Plain Township, Stark County, Ohio.
I will so move on Administrator number 1.
Second.
Discussion, essentially.
I'm sorry, yeah, we have been looking at a renewal or a replacement. I want to thank Tom Wolf and Sheriff Meyer, we all have been working on gathering numbers, information to project for the next 5 years, and have come to the conclusion if we want to keep our sheriff contract in whole, meaning no letting go any deputies from Plain Township, being able to replace our equipment on the recommended vehicles 8-year cycle, that we will need a replacement because by year 2023 we'd be essentially $32,000 short with a renewal, and by the end, approximately end of the whole cycle, about $700,000 short. Then I subtracted out my best estimate of carryover. We're still looking at a $200,000 shortfall because we do have some big one-time purchases coming up. One is in-car cameras, the other is body cameras, which are essential. And it just is the time, one time during this levy cycle, that they'll need replaced. But with a replacement, it allows us to keep all of our deputies, the SRO officer we share, our supervisor, the sergeant, everything that was put forth in the last levy.
I think what's important for, especially our scouts here in the group this evening, when we're talking renewal versus replacement, essentially levies dollars are identified through a millage. So you may hear, hey, it's 4.5 mil or it's 7.25 mil. It's a certain number. That's multiplied towards, you know, the property valuation that the auditors do. It ultimately drives out to, you know, a lump sum dollar amount that it'll cost the taxpayers over a period of time. So what we're looking at, a renewal would essentially keep the same exact dollar amount as it's previously generated. So it essentially reduces what we call the effective millage. Reason being, property values have went up, whereas with a replacement in all technicality, you know, our old levy may say it was 5 mil, and I'm just using arbitrary numbers here, it was 5 mil. The new levy is still going to be 5 mil, but what it's based upon is the most recent valuation. Sometimes you get into these levies and you could be looking 5, 10, 15 years back. So whether it's road, whether it's fire, whether it's a sheriff or whoever, unfortunately costs never, you know, go down. It's just inflation, things that are outside control, but through some planning and efforts, we come to these recommendations to put before the public, i.e. the voters, saying, hey, we're looking for a replacement levy. And specific to this, getting away from somewhat of the levy explanation, we've worked very closely and I think very well with the sheriff's office, especially over the last, George, you've been sheriff now, how many years have we gone?
7 years.
7 years. When George come on, our level of, the difference in our level of reporting has drastically changed. So from a transparency, accountability, what are we getting for our dollars? There's some of that. But then Lisa, who's our administrator, could also speak to at one point, a couple administrators back, somebody thought it was wise when we probably got a lump sum of money, hey, let's go buy a bunch of new cruisers all at once. Well, that's foolish because you buy them all at once, they all wear out at about the same point. So then you're on the hook. So I bring that up because we've worked with the sheriff's office to try to create this rotation. So even though it's like, man, you're always buying a new cruiser. But yeah, it's a life cycle replacement. It's planned instead of going, hey, we're going to wear these things out and then we got to come and ask for a big ask. Well, that combined with the fact in the past we have had to cut. How many years ago was that, Lisa?
We were down to about 12 deputies, I think,
Yeah.
before
When I first
the,
got here, we were, I think, 14 or 16 deputies.
yeah, and then
So-
we had to lay off even more, but not lay off, but let them go from
We've
Plain
had
Township.
some cuts, and the reason that's important to take into account, you've got reduced headcount, but our population in Plain with all the additional neighborhood build-outs in activity, when you're sitting there going, well, how soon are they gonna get here? And of course, you know, the sheriff's office always hears, you know, everything's always important, but, you know, they've got ways to prioritize what is the most pressing thing. We've essentially worked through building the relationship with the sheriff's office and the public to say, hey, here's what we can do if we have X resources, and the public has always been very strong supporters of our frontline first responders, so whether it's the sheriff's office or our fire EMS. So what we're looking to do is be able to maintain that same level of service while still planning for some of these, you know, equipment updates, and I'll leave it to Sheriff Meyer to be able to speak to, you know, some of the stuff technology-wise, whether it's body cameras, dash cam, technology, as you guys know, if you were to look at a PC to go to Best Buy, as soon as you buy it, within six months to a year, it's dated. Well, you know, outside of it being dated, evolving and so forth, there's some additional stuff here that is being planned in here. So if somebody goes, oh, well, there's gonna be this money here, it's actually, we're not looking to sit on a bunch of the public's money. It's all planned and timed expenditure. So I don't know, George or Chief Oliver, you wanna-
Well, one of the things to keep in mind is that the cost of things continue to rise. It's just like if you bought a new cell phone today, 2 years from now, that new cell phone is gonna cost a little more. And we deal with the exact same thing in our business. For example, just a few years ago, we were probably paying $5,000 or $6,000 less for a brand new vehicle. But today, when we buy a brand new vehicle, like the vehicles you see probably, you've seen Sergeant Koenig's car out there, that vehicle, by the time we get the equipment in it we need, the technological equipment in it that we need, we're probably real close to $50,000. And so when you take that times about 25, I think 22, 25, whatever the number is, that's a lot of money. As Trustee Haas said, if you try to buy that all at once, nobody can afford that. And so the township's done a very, very good job, fantastic job of really forecasting out and seeing how we need to spend our money within their police budget and maintain the service level that we currently have. And so by doing that, we can provide a better service to the citizens in the township, we have better response, and we reduce crime. And so that's really the goal, is to be able to provide that service level and to be able to reduce crime and be of service to the community. So with that, in order to keep up with those costs, kind of what we're talking about now, we have to go at this a little bit different way. We're asking for the same amount, but it's on a different tier, if you will, that brings in a little bit more money for the police levy in the township. So our cost, actually the biggest cost we have is the equipment and labor. And so when you figure those two costs in, the township gets a really big bang for their buck, so to speak, and be able to contract with the sheriff's office to provide those services.
We are significantly lower than our neighbors, Jackson Township, North Canton, Boardman Township, significantly lower. I know the last levy campaign, we put all those numbers and costs out, we can do that again. I don't know why every township doesn't contract with the sheriff's office, quite honestly. It's the most effective way to do the policing in the township.
I think the thing too, I mean, even though it's a small nuance, but it's an important nuance, is, I mean, the cruisers that you see in the township, they are Plain Township's cruisers. That's why we've got them labeled Plain Township. But, I mean, again, there's a lot of small things that add up to big impact. So, believe and keep me honest here, Sheriff, but, you know, one of the things, you know, even with the deputies, taking cruisers home, and even just having those out in the allotments in the neighborhoods, for anybody who's thinking of doing something stupid, if nothing else, it'll create some doubt. Unfortunately, it's still not going to deter everybody, but it also, outside of that, helps for speed response. So if they've got to enable somebody, you're not running out to 62, pick up a cruiser to then go to site. So there's so many nuances that get worked here that it really is important in, you know, being able to meet the demands and needs of our community.
And again, thank you for all the forecasting. when she came into office was the first time that we've been able to
Right.
sit down and forecast and project and create numbers, and that's
Well,
immensely helpful.
that helps all of us, honestly, be able to do that and let you know what we're looking at down the road. There's some things that Lisa had mentioned that we're gonna have to buy body cameras and in-car cameras. Well, so you know, we already have those items. Okay, we already, our deputies have, he's wearing one on his shoulder there, that's a body camera, and in his vehicle, he has an in-car camera. But this is technology, and most of us don't keep a cell phone for 5 years. This technology here will be for 5 years, and then we automatically update to the next version. Our cars, right now, we're end of life in the technology that's in our cars. The vendor has already sold their business and went out of business. We can't buy parts, so we're nursing that until the point where we can get a new system in place that will go into the future, continue to go into the future for us. So these things are always evolving, and the public, rightfully so, expects us to have the proper equipment.
And I think one other element, just to add from a pride and safety aspect. I know 11 years ago when I joined the board, we literally had some of our cruisers that sheriff's predecessor probably didn't do as much on the planning side. We literally had stuff zip tied on some of the cars. And you tell me if you're looking at these guys in the eye, or somebody that you know, and tell them, yeah, hey, I expect you to get in that and run hot. It's just.
Well, the downside of that was that the planning wasn't that great. We're past that now, we're doing much better. But the downside of that was that if there's an emergency at your home and you're calling 911 and you expect us to be there, we have to have the equipment to be able to get there. Frequently, we were getting calls for the cars in the township to be towed, and we never make it to the calls to respond for service. So we are well past that, thanks to the forecasting and the wisdom of the board to put things in place so that we continue to have the most efficient equipment available to us. So we appreciate that.
Any other discussion on that?
No, just for the sake of understanding why we're putting this on now, obviously, we want to make sure that when it goes out to the Board of Elections, all the language is correct, because we want to be able to meet that deadline in August. But we will be doing other presentations between now and when that happens to get more in depth of the understanding of how the budgetary process works. You know, what a lot of people don't understand about levies is that it appears the first year that you have a whole bunch of money that you don't need, and nothing is further from the truth. So, you know, we'll make those presentations as well to show that that money is actually spread out over a 5-year period. And we were actually one of the first townships in the county to create capital funds. And capital funds were to prevent that what appeared to be excess money and carryover. So our carryover is very small because we will look out 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, and create capital accounts so that we know we're going to buy 3 cruisers next year. We're going to create a capital account for those 3 cruisers for next year. And if we know we're going to buy 3 more the year after that and we have a little bit of extra money the first year, we'll put it in that capital account. So you know, that's kind of a watchdog process, but as we get spread out.
It improves the transparency.
Absolutely.
Transparency of funds, which the taxpayers deserve, so.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And then, Mr. Wolf, if you'll certify that resolution tonight, and then I'll put it with everything else and bring it to the board tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rose.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Chief.
much.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is a resolution to authorize payment to Krugliak, Wilkins, Griffiths, and Dougherty for professional services rendered in the amount not to exceed $6,764 to be paid from 01A10A.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And then item number 3 is a resolution to authorize payment to Ellsworth Auto Body for repairs to a police 2018 Interceptor in the amount not to exceed $6,384.43 from our police fund.
I'll move on administrator number 3.
I'll second.
Discussion.
We've already been reimbursed in whole from Perso for this. It just took a little longer because the other insurance company, it was the other driver's fault, and there was some back and forth, and we just wanted to get it repaired and get it back into rotation. So we fronted the money, we have been reimbursed in whole from Otarma.
Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And that's the end of the administrator report.
It's going to take us to the fire department. Chief?
Thank you. Item number 1 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees to change Deputy Chief David Kraft status to part-time hourly effective June 28, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
And item number 2, should have a letter in there from, a thank you letter from one of our residents that attended Safety City. Just as a thanks for the great Safety City experience. I'm glad their crew was able to find a way to make the event continue. It was well done and informative and fun for the kids. Thank you for the time behind the scenes and all the hard work. Our daughter is the last of 3 to go through Safety City, so it was our last go-around with the program. Our older children watched the videos, and it was a great refresher. Aaron, Joseph. And I did, I think this was included too, it's our kind of thank you letter we sent out to
Yeah.
all the team. Actually, Sheriff Meyer just left, but Mr. Koenig there can maybe relay it too. Obviously, we had people from the Stark County Sheriff's involved, Stark County Safe Kids, Health Department, Children's Hospital, local vets and stuff that all helped that program go. And so we just wanted to give a thank out to them. We're going to send this out to everyone and kind of kept it going. We hated to break the chain. It's, it's 24 years we've done that in a row, and we didn't really want to stop having that program. So it was, a little bit extra work to make all those videos, and we had some people internally. One of our guys, Alex Hilton, kind of edited them all, put them all together, so and make it go.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, nice.
That concludes fire department.
Thanks.
Okay, take us to the road department. Mr. Iacino?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to contract with Greystone Construction through the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program, contract number 091319 for the purchase and installation of a bright span fabric structure building. Total amount not to exceed $69,705.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. I think it's important to bring up our current salt storage facility has been limped along for quite some time. Is that
30 years plus.
Yeah. It's a combination of its shape, as anything, it wears out in time. But 2 is we've also got more roadways in the township. We typically make multiple purchases through the year for salt for the winter months, and that's even with reduced salt usage due to salt controls, pre-wetting, technology, the whole 9 yards. What we're looking at with this facility, we essentially could go the entire winter without having to bring in or make multiple orders, correct, Joe?
Yeah, that's
the
the goal, and I think it's going to make it possible with the secondary salt building we put up too. So
well, to boot, we've, because of our collaborative relationships with some of the neighboring communities, even when we've had to take the salt when the providers have it, we've been able to store elsewhere. And I mean, no different than asking a friend to help you out on occasions, one thing, but also can't be taking advantage of them either. So this facility will help us address some of that.
there's a contract for the board to sign tonight. So get this project moving. And we are looking, getting quotes right now for demolition of the old building. So we'll have that here by the end of the week, hopefully.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Next thing, I'd ask, well, I'll put these two things on. I think, number 2, yard waste drop-off site. For anybody who's watching us remotely, to those here in the office, our township yard waste site, which is private, just township residents only. Should you go down there, you'll start recognizing a couple updates that we've made down there. The big one being that we've just recently paved the rest of the area. That should help reduce the mud and dust down there. It wasn't, you know, an expensive proposition because we were actually able to do it in-house with our own staff, but even the base material that went into that with some of the road rage we were getting from all the side streets down over the hill here, it was all getting trucked right in. So it'll also help, it'll just help us with site operations and so forth down there. So Joe, kudos to your guys. I know
Thank you.
Brooke was down there at one point, I was down there, I think John, you were down there, so, I mean, at all times.
Yeah, they did a great job. I hopefully, weather permitting, that we get to finish that last little bit that we have to pay tomorrow. We haven't been able to get it done this week. So, it's supposed to be nice in the morning. Should be able to get it done.
Next item I had, just, I wanted to bring it up for public attention, more as an informative update. You know, over the last couple of years, we've seen the widening of Market 43, starting from essentially 55th up to Grove, and Grove to Apple Grove, and then one of the future phases was supposed to be Apple Grove to Mount Pleasant. Some certain things didn't change there with ODOT, but if everybody's familiar with where 43 and Market, and that sort of wides off, and then you've got Mount Pleasant cutting through, there's been some line of sight issues there for some time, and we've had our share of accidents up there, but working with ODOT, actually on a pretty fast track basis, we've got an alternative plan that's come up, we're still working through, but it's about a $2.15 million project, of which ODOT, through their funding sources, is committed to 1.8. The additional fund difference, Joe's working with county engineer to see how they plan on covering that, to see if we're going to have a share. And given that's right on the Plain Township, Lake Township border, there'll likely, if there's local contributions required, I'm assuming Lake will be in on that. But ideally, if we get that all triaged out, that's probably still what, by the time they bid that out and get it going, we're still looking at about it somewhere 18 months probably, Joe?
Yeah, that'd be a good guess, yeah. About 18
Approximately.
months.
So, you know, we're continuing to monitor outside of these different road projects that we do just in paving and curb and gutter, some of these other major safety issues, but it's been possible because we do work with the county engineer on a number of different engagements. So I just wanted to bring that up for an update. That being said, that wraps up road, takes us to the zoning department. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Farrar.
Thank you, sir. Item number 1 is a resolution to declare items A through F as nuisance abatements.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Hey, Tom, just as a quick question to give our scouts a little bit of a feel here. Of the abatements typically high grass, unlicensed, inoperable vehicles, just unsightly situations that fall within certain language that the township's able to take action on everything doesn't necessarily constitute a nuisance. But of the 6 that we have on here that made it all the way, how many calls approximately or situations were we able to mitigate before bringing it to the board this go round, or would you say on average? Because I mean, this, even though it seems like 6 properties compared to what we get calls in, it's.
We received approximately 65 complaints, and we're able to whittle those down to what we have.
It's just important, it's important to know, because when we have to send our crews out, we essentially charge the property owners tax duplicate, they get billed for it, and so forth. Typically, we're pretty good at getting paid, but there are occasions where that money gets tied up, so when money gets tied up here, it means you can't use it somewhere else, so just trying to provide you guys a little context here tonight. Go ahead.
And item number 2 is a resolution to declare items A through H as nuisance abatement payments.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And that'll be all for zoning, so.
Thank you, Tom. Nothing out of the parks, nothing out of the law director. Communication, you get this evening, because East Campbell doesn't have her PC.
Yep.
So,
Number one, communication number 1 is a thank you from a Mr. Worth on Chaucer. He's short and sweet. He says, superb job of paving Chaucer. Kudos to all involved. Number 2 is a census communication. And if I'm reading it correctly, that percentage that you see in front of you is simply a reference to the response percentage.
and I can speak to this, because I
Go ahead.
asked to put this
Yeah.
on. In short, Commissioner Regula is the liaison or the contact into the census. I know some folks don't like to complete these things because, I think Big Brother government's tracking me, the whole 9 yards. But the reality is this dictates what type of resources financially get pushed back to the county and to the subdivisions like Plain Township. And right now, we're at 77.1%. In 2010, we had 83%. Our population's grown a little bit here with the new build out, but I think the figure I had seen as I was talking with one of my Canton Township fellow trustees, it's a couple $1,000s per individual that we're gonna lose out on by folks that choose not to complete it. I can tell you it's extremely simple. For those who, whether it's a smartphone or a computer, you can go online and it's a matter of 5 minutes at absolute best. So please help the township and help yourself. If you haven't done the census or you know somebody that hasn't, you can just bring it up. It's a quick casual conversation. I get it when you're hanging out with friends. It's probably not a cool subject, but we want to get our share of taxpayer dollars back here versus seeing those dollars go into some other community because they've had a stronger response rate. So.
And frankly, it's the law, and it's our civic duty to participate. Everybody gets counted, whether you're, a tribal community, legal, illegal, homeless, homeowners, renters, students, everybody needs to be counted. And it's confidential, it's very easy to do.
And actually, Eric, if I remember correctly, based on home rule and some of the things that we are allowed to do based on the legislation of that, there is a very close cutoff point for us. A lot of times it's at 35,000, and they go back and they actually utilize those census as a part of whether we are able to legally do something or not. So that's critical for us, because we're big enough that if we can meet that number, then there are certain things that we can do based on the legislation that other smaller townships can't do.
We just discussed it with our Dora. as an example.
Yes,
Is that it
correct.
costs 35,000, I think we heard 35,400 or something like
Yeah.
that.
Because it's what, 2,900 a person?
What do you mean?
Per person when we're counting that we get back to the township.
There's that, plus there's.
Oh,
another
yeah.
factor, that's why.
Yeah, so, it's insignificant.
On that note, nothing else under communications.
I have one.
That's right, sorry.
It's okay.
It was from earlier that missed on the, that had got put under fire, Brookhaven.
Yes, this is for the fire department. I got a phone call from the Cowleys in regards to the professionalism and the quick response of our fire department when they had a fire in their basement with the plug connected to their dryer. And they were very appreciative and was happy that their house was saved and it was minimal damages. And it's all due to our fire department. I just want to make sure they were aware of that, how appreciative they were.
Pass on a thank you back to them, we appreciate their support.
Public, portion of the meeting, public speaks. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address the Board of Trustees? And if so, we'd ask that you just state your name and address for the record. Nothing? Okay.
So are we guessing that all the scouts are here for, just to observe a meeting, or?
They're working on, I believe it's the citizenship.
They are working on citizenship in the community, and they are learning all about Plain Township.
Actually have the opportunity, actually I've got a good opportunity for you guys, possibly if there's interest, because I'm not sure who I reached out to, but the beginning of August, over at Barley's Event Center off of Easton here, they're gonna have flags of honor. Bear with me, bear with me, I'm just looking at my calendar for the,
August, it's like 21st, 2nd, 3rd? It's 3 days.
yeah, it's through, gracious, of course, under pressure now.
Yeah.
I'll work to get it to you, but they're looking for
Yeah.
potentially scouts that would be willing to help, post colors. There's approximately 983 flags that are gonna go up over there, and they're gonna be reading a number of names, so.
And that's in July or?
August.
It's August. I'll find it
It's called
out.
Flags of Honor.
Okay,
So to that point, sorry to.
that's good, no, that's good.
Yeah, so do any of you have any questions of us about anything that you've observed, or you have a question on?
How painful is it, Matt?
Yeah.
How many police cars usually go out a year?
We try to do a 3-year replacement, or a 3 vehicle per year replacement.
So we've got approximately 24 or 25, was it? Yeah.
Yep.
Vehicles, so essentially you're replacing an eighth, a little over 12% of your fleet every year. And actually, I've been here long enough to see, I mean, like the Chargers were the new thing, I think right when I come on, but they were a short-term answer because of Ford not having a solution. And it was really Chevy, GM was the only other option, but these things they get their use. They're well maintained, but they also get their use when you've got the geography you're covering here, so.
What happens, they auction those off after the old ones, or crush them, or?
Well, it's a combination of things, depending upon the condition and how worn out they are. Sometimes they're not worth much at auction, so we will use them down at our fire training facility, which is down there with yard waste. So chief will have the guys doing extrications and burns and stuff like that. There have been a few things where on occasion they may get sold. Otherwise, I think there's some stuff that's piece parted, especially on some of the older cruisers like the Crown Vics. It's like, hey, it's worth more us parting it out just so our 1 or 2 other older cruisers and so forth. But it's really a combination of those things.
I only have a comment. I wanted to say that I personally appreciate the immediate response that we have always received from the township, whether it be regard to road issues or security issues. But also for this meeting in particular, I appreciate you taking the time to make the extra explanations of the levy and the abatement for these young men here. I think that's, we appreciate you doing that, and that's important things for them to learn.
Well, we try our best. I mean, unfortunately, this is a decent crowd, even with social distancing. Unfortunately, these things for, anybody, it's your first time here, and for the scouts, these meetings are more of a formality and stuff that we're so used to. You know, that we fly through, you're going, wait a minute, now what was this or what was that? And it's not that we take anything for granted, so sometimes we have to stop and ask ourselves rhetorical questions, but it's intended to help create that understanding, because an informed and an engaged community helps make for a better community, and that's why we get the strong support that we do when we make ask of the public for different resources. So, anything else under public speaks?
That event is August 21st, 22nd, 23rd
Thank you, Chief.
at Farley.
That'll conclude public speaks. It'll take us to concerns of trustees. I've got 2 items on here. First one, because it's the real easy one, I'm just gonna go, a couple years ago, we had entered into an agreement with a couple other political subdivisions in the USGS where they were doing monitoring of, like, the Zimber Ditch, the Nimishillen Creek, and so forth, and they've had these monitoring gauges at different points throughout. While they're coming upon finishing their study, there's a proposal before the commissioners, which ultimately is going to come back to us in some way, shape, or form to see if we want to continue moving forward with it. But essentially, the immediate benefit of going, okay, well, you're monitoring the water, the volume that's going through here, what's the matter to me? Well, if you're along the Zimber Ditch, I can tell you it makes a world of difference in being able to prepare for, you know, water flooding type issues. And even with the Nimishillen over here, when it gets high with some of the residential build out and so forth, it abuts it. Everybody thinks, oh, it's cool, I live next to water. Until the water starts rising and you're going, didn't plan for this. You know, for the adults in the room, how much is my homeowner's insurance going to cover or not cover, and I'm going to be on the hook for it. So we'll expect some more information forthcoming on that probably within the next month or two. So I just want to make everybody aware of that. Going back to the first point, Edgewood Community Center. Article in the paper a couple weeks ago. I want this on public record because it's nothing shy of a hornet's nest for some people, but it is my responsibility of being our responsibility of being fiscally responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. I couldn't help but anticipate the question or questions that may be forthcoming from the public about Edgewood Community Center. That being said, I'll start out with a statement that no Plain Township levy dollars of any type go into that property whatsoever. Never have, nor do we anticipate. Edgewood Community Center had posted, I'm going to say approximately 2.5, 3 weeks ago, hey, unfortunately after a 13-year run, we've had to close our doors. This definitely has a history past to it that it's a project that took a lot of scrutiny out of the gates back in 06, 07 when the church bought the property. At the time that the church bought the property, there was talks of, oh, well, you've got the church and then you've got this other separate entity, Edgewood Community Center. Well, at the time, Congressman Regula would have still been in office, and through a combination of private donations as well as whether you want to call them earmarked or they're federal tax dollars at the end of the day. Those went into that project over there. Of course, folks were trying to delineate how and why. You know, on the surface, you're being told that separate entities, you know, the church and the community center. Well, I couldn't help but be intrigued to go, okay, even though it's not Plain Township tax dollars, if they're federal tax dollars and earmarked, however they were coming through in this situation, they come through a HUD grant, what restrictions, caveats, and conditions are on that money? Was it one-time money that had no restrictions, or was it money that had certain reporting requirements, the whole 9 yards? At the end of the day, we didn't award those taxpayer dollars, but still applying the same level of scrutiny we do here, we've got, as far as I'm concerned, we have an obligation to research and keep the public informed of that. I had multiple conversations with multiple stakeholders across multiple entities on this. Most of it's publicly documented. You've got to do a little bit of research here. But essentially, when the church acquired the property, they had established an LLC called Thousand Hills Enterprises. It was from Thousand Hills Enterprises that they then created the 501c3 nonprofit Edgewood Community Center. So essentially, the underlaying is it's still the church. Fast forward 2011, some financial struggles. It was talked about in the community. This isn't some secret backdoor room conversation or Scott Hawes speculating. It had been in the press. It had been out and about. The church had to sign a deed in lieu of foreclosure to a company in California called CDS. Again, public information. It would have been posted on the Stark County Auditor's site, because whenever you've got a mortgage or some type of land purchase agreement, you're a interested party to that. So it would be publicly sourced there. Church, through some changes in leadership and so forth, you know, got themselves back on solid footing, but, you know, at the same time, Edgewood Community Center had its own separate board, mixed of different stakeholders and so forth. And essentially CDS, you know, had applied certain pressures over there that I know through one of our former firefighters who was president of the board at the time, had said they tried to, you know, make sure they were removed from that, you know, deed in lieu of foreclosure thing, given, you know, hey, we're a separate entity in the whole 9 yards. The underlying element, though, is it's still all stemmed from the church. The church. A lot of good people, so please don't take this in any derogatory context. I'm just providing the facts for what they are, because I've got some folks that aren't happy of the fact that we're scrutinizing the fact what's going on over there. A couple years, fast forward, 2018. The Solomon Foundation is actually the new entity that owns it. You can go out to the Stark County Auditor's site right now and see that they're the owner of record for that. What the terms and conditions are of whether it's a loan or a lease or whatever back to church, I don't know. That's none of our business as far as I'm concerned. It's a private party deal, but you know, they've got themselves in a better position. So outside of protecting the tax dollars and scrutinizing that, the one responsibility we clearly have here in the township is making sure that we don't have commercial buildings sitting vacant and becoming blighted. We're fortunate, we've got a hell of a story sitting around right back here. You know, we've recently got plans approved to reappropriate the Kmart over off of 62 and Harmont. So the concern is you got something, you know, located where there's a new residential development going on around. It sits tucked back. It raises reasonable concerns of what could happen to it, what will be done with it, and so forth. There's still work in progress over there, but, you know, as I was quoted in the paper, and I've identified through multiple sources, part of the plans are to dissolve, clearly, Edgewood Communities, i.e. the 501c3. What happens moving forward, it's not 100% certain, but there's discussions whether it's senior programming and or adults with disabilities. There's a lot of details to be ironed out. To that note, we'll keep our finger and a pulse on it. Again, it's a private party deal, so at the end of the day, they don't have to make us aware of things. We're gonna, you know, continue to try to be as engaged as possible. I know I've engaged our executive director at the North Canton Y, that I sit on their board, to see what we can do in pairing organizations together to provide additional services out into the township and the neighboring areas. So, that being said, you know, to bring this all back around, close with, what's the township gonna do with any of the tax dollars? Again, no local tax dollars went into it from a Plain Township levy and funding source. There's nothing that we're gonna be able to take and put elsewhere. How we did find out about it would have been through the social media posting that they had provided. So if there's anybody in the public that has questions at any point in time, whether it's that facility or anything else, we'll inform you to the best of our ability, but I also want anybody that's out there and concerned, you know, well, what's the township concerned about this? Again, anything that's got tax dollars of any sort to go into, as long as I'm here, I can guarantee we'll certainly scrutinize that. So that's the only thing I had on Edgewood. Anything else for the good? Okay, that'll close out concerns of trustees, concerns of the fiscal officer.
No concerns.
Okay, it'll take us to the approval of the minutes for June 9th, 2020. Also moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Next is also move on approval of the minutes for June 16th, 2020.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Abstain.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Okay. We do have a need for executive session, so I'm going to make a motion, be it hereby resolved by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to adjourn to executive session at 6:52 p.m. from this regular meeting as authorized under Ohio Revised Code 121.22G for the purpose of consideration of 2A, the purchase of real, personal, tangible, or intangible property, and 7A, to consider confidential information related to the marketing plan, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance, provided that both of the following conditions apply. 7A. And I'm not going to read that because it's just a bunch of numbers, so.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.